Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. We are right now in part 2 of a series about adoption awareness. So in November is Adoption Awareness Month, and so I'm doing a series about that. I will link the first video down below for you. It was all about why should you adopt. So in this video, we're going to talk about different types of adoptions, like different ways you could go about adopting. There's not just one way that people adopt. I've actually never heard an adoption story that was exactly like someone else's. They are always changing, always doing something different. Like they're just always different stories. And so let's start from domestic adoption. So you can go either way with this. So in the United States, you can go through an agency. Domestic just means in the United States or in the country you are living in. That's domestic adoption. At home, domestic. Makes sense? So you can go through an agency in the United States and they can find a child for you in need. People that want to put their child up for adoption come to these agencies and they find a child for you. And typically, if you go through an agency, you can get an infant. So a baby from birth. And with those type of adoptions, you can go a couple of different ways. You can do like an open adoption or a closed adoption. And so you could know the mother of that child and you can walk her through all the way from the beginning of her pregnancy to giving birth. A lot of people that go this way, they end up in the delivery room with the biological mother and see their child for the first time in the delivery room. That's one way you can adopt. That's magical. Wouldn't that be cool? And then there is, I think you have to pay for part of the expenses there, and it gets a little complicated. You pay for insurance for her, stuff like that. But I love that way of adopting. That's beautiful. And then there's also another way that you can do it domestically is without an agency, and you know somebody in your life, a friend or a family member even, that is pregnant. And they want to give their children to you, or like a neighbor, they want to give their child to you. That is a way you can adopt a child. You normally just have to pay for court fees or whatever agreements you have with that person. So that is another way you can adopt. I've had a friend that has done it that way as well. They get a little complicated as well. All adoptions are messy and complicated. It's just complicated transferring a parent's right to another parent's right. If you can imagine that being complicated, it's complicated. Another way you can domestically adopt in the United States is through foster care. So that's what me and my husband did. We did foster to adopt. So I'm very familiar with this way of adopting. I really, really love this way of adopting because you can get that child straight from the parent's home and you can make a difference in your community. Very local. I love all those things. They don't have to switch schools. That's awesome. Typically though, with foster care, there's pros and cons to everything. There's a possibility for you to get an infant, but it's not very likely, but you would have to do a foster to adopt. You have to do foster care first before you adopt them. So there's a potential that child will be taken from your home back to their parents. Reunification is the goal of foster care, which is awesome, but also it makes it complicated. So that's one way you can adopt. Another way you can adopt is internationally, and that is like the same way you can do it through an agency. Typically, you do it with an agency. It's not very often that you know someone that needs to be adopted and you go through their mother. That's not very typical. You normally go through an agency for those children to be adopted. Sometimes if you are working in an orphanage overseas, I've known parents that would move to those countries to be with that child until they can get that child adopted. That's actually very common with some international adoptions. You actually have to live in that country for a good portion of the time, maybe 6 or 7 months or something, before that child can be adopted. So there's multiple ways you can adopt. Another way you can adopt is like if you're a step parent and you adopt your spouse's biological child, not your child biologically, but her child biologically or his child biologically, you can adopt that child. You do have to have the father or the mother give up the rights to that child, their biological parent give up the rights to that child before you can legally adopt them. So that is messy as well. Honestly, adoption can be really messy, and like the start of adoption, there's always some sort of tragedy where a biological parent can't take care of their child. So like that part of it is terrible, but coming into a different reality where a child can live with like people that love them and care about them in a better situation, that is awesome. And like I said in my last video, like all those biological moms out there that place their children up for adoption are so brave and so powerful. I love all that stuff. And like when you go to adopt, you have to kind of purpose in your heart, like, am I going to be okay with an open adoption, meaning I have a lot of like communication with the biological parents, or am I okay with a closed adoption where I don't want any communication with the biological parents? Like wherever you're at, there's an option for you, and you can do that with foster care. All of the cases are closed adoptions, like all of them. And then when you like adopt them, like it's up to you whether or not that person at that point, they're just like kind of like a stranger, like are you going to allow that person in their life or not if it's healthy for them. I would love for our kids as biological parents to have some sort of peace in their life, but at this point that has not happened. So, but I do know moms that have that happen. And then I also know moms where they adopted from China or from overseas and they have no clue like who their biological parents are because it was illegal for them to give their child up for adoption like it is in China. So lots of different types of adoption, different ways to adopt. Really, really good conversation. So let me know the reason, like what route you guys went. What agency did you guys go with? Like, and why did you pick that? So just let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And then in the next video, we're going to talk more about adoption as well. And I'm trying to get my teenage son on here, and I have a few interviews lined up. So you're not going to want to miss this series at all, guys. So hit that subscribe button if you're interested in any of that. And I hope you guys are having the best day ever, and I'll see you next time. Bye!